Blue-red on the other. Now, speaking of Tom in our pregame show yesterday, it was actually pretty interesting because Tom has done a little bit of preparation, but he's been chasing points in the Open Series this year, so he's been playing a lot of Constructed, not a ton of Limited. But Tom did mention at Grand Prix Tampa a few years back, he didn't actually get a lot of practice in for that particular tournament. It was a former Zendikar sealed, and he was able to top 8 that one. He's got 3 Limited Grand Prix top 8s on the resume. Most people don't know that about Tom, so he actually's got some prowess in this format. And if you think about Grand Prix Orlando, when we covered that last year, he lost playing for top 8 twice.
Yeah, he was X-1 or X-0-1 with very few rounds to go and just lost back-to-back rounds to miss a top 8, which was quite painful for Tom as he was making efforts to get back on the Pro Tour at that point, but was able to get back after a second-place finish at Grand Prix New Jersey.
Coral Helm Guide is where Max Brown has started this game off. For Ross, it's that very powerful Valakut Invoker.
And these are 2 very good examples of cards that allow ostensibly aggressive decks to still be able to punch later on in the game. Very powerful ways to sink your mana. They're fine plays on curve, and if you have to happen to draw them on turn 7 or flood out a little bit, they can win the game by themselves.
Well, it'll be the Griffin there for Max Brown, the Courier Griffin. That'll trigger, gain him 2 life. He's got a 2/3 flyer out there on the battlefield as we head back Ross's way. Talking to Tom yesterday in our pregame show, he mentioned that he was a fan of playing quite a few more lands in his deck this weekend, and he does have 18, 8 mountains, 8 islands, and Evolving Wilds, and a Skyline Cascade. Also has a copy of Hedron Archive as well. But it looks like he missed his land drop that particular turn, so Griffin is going to come across in the red zone, going to knock Ross down to 16. We'll see if Max Brown has a decent follow-up here.
And Max Brown's deck here, kind of a no-frills blue-white flyer strategy. 3 copies of Sheer Drop. Sheer Drop plays very nicely in a deck with flyers. The card doesn't work sometimes when the game bogs down and no one's really in a position to attack. But if you're all in the air, your opponent cracks back and then your removal spells are very good.
Spell Shrivel did take care of that Eldrazi Sky Spawner. Pretty important there for Ross, honestly, because he just wants to slow things down a little bit because he's missing some lands. He's got an Nettle Drone, and he's going to pass the turn back. Now, that one actually is one we haven't got the opportunity to talk about. Pretty nice card there.
This is more of a draft build around and can be very powerful in certain red-blue and red-black strategies. In Sealed, less likely to take over a game by itself, but you play with what you can play with.
It is worth noting Nettle Drone does not go to creatures, only opponents.
Yes.
So, we have seen in formats past where pingers can take down creatures and cards like Frost Wielder and Prodigal Sorcerer and all that stuff, but no, can't do that here. There is Core Entanglers. That did come in, and it tapped that Valakut Invoker.
Also, another nice card to pair with Sheer Drop.
Yes.
It's a combo.
There you go.
It is tapped, and then it is eligible to be targeted with a removal spell.
You don't miss the combos.
See all the synergies.
Just another member of Combo Nation. A Cryptic Cruiser there for Ross last turn. 4 mana, 3/3. Not anything too special going on there. Do get the tap target creature. I guess it is a tapper. Expensive.
Combo
for the ability.
with Sheer Drop.
Yep. Just multiple combos with Sheer Drop. Ross going to make a double block here, try to catch up. Going to make Brown have a trick, and he does have one.
Yeah, unfortunately, I believe Brown with 2 copies of Gideon's Reproach in his deck, so fairly likely he has one there. Tom just trying to slow the game down and catch back up. If he's able to make that block successfully, that gives him some breathing space, but Brown with the trick, and now Ross very far behind.
Miststalker, the follow-up there for Brown. He's got just 1 card left in his hand. He's trying to play a more aggressive game, which I think is how blue-white oftentimes does play. So now it's on Ross, who's the one with a lot of cards in his hand, to try to get them out of his hand, convert those resources to something that can go onto the battlefield, maybe try to catch up here a little bit. And Mist Intruder, excuse me, is the card.
It's going to be challenging for Ross to do anything about this unless his hand is just removal spells or flyers.
For Ross, it's an Acomb Stonewaker. That one, really nice when you're on the offensive. Not great when you're on the defensive, but again, Tom is just trying to trade here as much as possible. We'll see if he's ever given the opportunity to do that. Brown tapping some mana on the main phase. Looks like he's found something to do.
Just an odd situation here for Brown, as Ross has been stalled on land and then made a pretty big underdrop that turn. So I think he's probably playing around something like Horribly Awry.
Max Brown's deck looks pretty good. That's Annoying Dark. That is a very powerful rare. And because there's an ally on the battlefield, comes down and taps something as well. And Ross is dead in the water. That's the kind of draw that blue-white wants to have. You're curving out every turn, you're casting something every turn. You got the trick for the double block there in Gideon's Reproach, and all of a sudden you're very quickly up a game.
Yeah, Brown's deck looks very good, but the bulk of the power is coming from commons and uncommons. It's not like he's got a bunch of rares in this deck. It's just a very synergistic pool, very fast, very aggressive.
And you see these two players, seasoned veterans of Magic, both in Constructed and in Limited. And the first thing they did, they went right to the sideboard. They have an idea of what they want to bring in for the matchup. And it's weird to call it a matchup because it's more of a color combination and cards that they've seen. They can't even really guess, you know, if you're playing Jeskai Black versus Abzan, okay, well, I know what they have in their main deck and I know what's coming from the sideboard. In this, you're just making your best guess based off of what you've seen so far.
And I think one of the cards that Brown is probably going for here is his copy of Exert Influence. Brown is only 2 colors, and most of the people that I spoke to feel like if your deck is 2 colors, Exert Influence is not a card you can play in the main deck. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that philosophy, but that's been repeated enough times that it appears to be a consensus opinion. But Ross produced a lot of 2 and 3 mana, 2 power plays, so Exert Influence could be very good here.
No, what's interesting about that, again, because you're not working with perfect information, or at least a lot of information like you are in Constructed, you take a look at Tom Ross's deck list here. Colorless cards: Kozilek's Chandler, Oblivion Sower, Ruin Processor, Scour from Existence. Tom's got 18 lands in his deck and a Hedron Archive. He's looking to go a lot longer.
But from the looks of things, you know, Ross played some kind of aggressive early plays.
Yeah.
It might look like he is, you know, a blue-red colorless matters aggressive style deck. It does not appear that that's the case.
And Tom's deck, actually, taking a look at the cards that he's got here in his blue-red deck, looks pretty good. Clutch of Currents, card I know you're a fan of. Coastal Discovery as well. Coral Helm Guide, a Cryptic Cruiser, which he played that game. Eldrazi Sky Spawner, a Premier Common. Looks like he's got both of his copies of Spell Shrivel in the main deck. Ugin's Insight, Ulamog's Reclaimer, and Wavewing Elemental for blue cards. For red, he's got that Stone Waker that we saw at the end of that game. Nettle Drone as well. The Rolling Thunder, a Stone Fury, 2 Valakut Invokers, beautiful card early and late. And then he's got those 18 lands. And also Herald of Kozilek, which is a blue-red card.
So it seems an issue that I have here with Ross's deck, with the exception of Herald of Kozilek, it doesn't sound like he has a lot that makes a big impact until he gets to 5 mana and beyond.
Sure.
So in games where he stalls on 4 mana, he's not going to keep up with a deck like Brown's, who's doing a lot more productive stuff, just producing flyers and better tempo plays in that range of mana. Ross really needs to get to 5, 6, 7 mana and beyond to start doing powerful stuff.
He's got some heavy hitters once he gets up there.
Yep, but those cards you rattled off, everything 4 mana and less, not a very impressive roster. The power level of the deck is coming from the top end of the curve. And so games where he stalls on 4 mana probably going to look like that a good percentage of the time.
Yeah, those early cards that I rattled off there, I think those are there just to trade.
As opposed to, you know, you look at Max Brown's deck, he's got 2 copies of Gideon's Reproach and 3 copies of Sheer Drop. If he's stuck on 4 lands, he still can interact just fine.
Sure.
And he would like to get to 5 mana, he's got some plays up there. But if he is light on mana early on in the game, he's going to be fine. I don't think that's the case for Ross.
Now, we will find out if Tom Ross is going to play or draw here this game. Again, we're not doing Constructed, where the decision is 99% of the time play. Maybe you're in a blue mirror where you want to draw. So we'll see what Ross did elect to do here.
I think that Brown showed enough aggression in that game, and Ross is also just a player who's typically going to play a lot, that I'll expect him to take the play. But it's not clear and sealed. People mix it up.
And Tom did choose to draw.
Okay.
So Max Brown will be on the play with his blue-white deck, who's able to run Ross out of the gym in that last game. Tom taking a long look at his hand. Brown with a very quick mulligan, did not like what he saw. I always love when you choose to draw first and your opponent mulligans. You feel like you got one over on him.
There is nothing in Magic that makes me feel smarter. It's been that way for 20 years now. When I choose to draw, my opponent looks at their hand and mulligans, and I'm thinking to myself, it's sealed. Sometimes the draws are a little clunky to begin with. I'm up 8 cards to 6. We're just going to game 3. Yeah. We don't even need to play this one out.
This one's just over. There's no draw you could have.
Right. I mean, if you want to play it out, that's fine, I guess. It's your tournament too. But in the interest of saving time, I would just prefer to go to game 3.
A little Vancouver mulligan here from Max. He'll leave it on top. Game number 2 about to be underway. Let's see how he wants to start things off. He's got himself a Sandstone Bridge. For Ross, it looks like an Evolving Wilds. It's a Mist Intruder there for Brown. Evolving Wilds, again, we're going to see a lot of that this weekend. An island, and it's a Stonewaker. Now, Tom's deck is capable of some aggressive draws, but for the most part, I think he's looking to play a longer game.
Yeah, definitely of the two decks, his is the one with much more punch once you get later on.
There's a Plains. Here comes the Mist Intruder. Coastal Discovery is exiled. I'm going to search up an island there. I believe Pilgrim's Eye?
Pilgrim's Eye.
Yep.
Undoing the mulligan, so I suppose we can play it out from here.
Does the boss have land 3? You're going to allow us to continue play. That's nice of you. Pilgrim's Eye is a nice one in this format.
Yep, that and Evolving Wilds dictate a lot of what you can do with your pools. Once you get beyond that, you can, when you have those kind of cards, then you can start looking at your third color, maybe in your fourth color. In the absence of those cards, I think you have to keep it at 2 for the most part.
Eldrazi Sky Spawner there from Ross. Get used to that one at home. You're going to see a lot of those. That's a common that many like in this format. Here comes the Mist Intruder. Any trades here for Tom Ross?
Could potentially be a trade here coming from Ross, even though his is the better of the two objectively, because Pilgrim's Eye is checking the Sky Spawner on the way back. So this is a fine thing to trade with.
And now Max final pass the turn back. So for the most part, I agree with you that Max's deck is the more aggressive of the two, but he's also got this weird suite of cards, right? In Gideon's Reproach and Sheer Drop, which don't really promote aggression.
Yeah, well, they do when things line up the right way.
Yeah.
When his creatures are in play and his opponent is forced to double block or turn the game into a race, they do work. It is dangerous, the spot that Brown's in right now, because if Ross's hand is just removal spells, if he doesn't need to attack to make much out of his hand, it's possible that Brown's resources are just not going to line up the right way. The game's going to drag out, and Ross is going to beat him with his better top end.
Well, there's a Valakut Invoker there for the boss, but again, no fourth land. Now here's a Kozilek's Chandler for Max Brown. That's a 4/4, and it can generate some mana. Also a popular card with many.
I have not seen a seal pull yet that has cut this card.
Just pretty safe.
Yeah, the floor is high on this card. Worst case scenario, 5-mana 4/4, it's not going to kill you if you have to cast it. And so because there's so many big stuff at common and uncommon, you're naturally going to want more mana even in your aggressive decks.
Pilgrim's Eye into the red zone. And now we're going to go back Ross's way, see if he can draw land number 4. Now keep in mind, he does have a 4th mana available because of that Eldrazi Scion. He can sacrifice and generate a colorless, but that's not really all that exciting. It's a one-shot deal.
Yeah, he needs to hang on to that one for a while, especially with his deck having demands on mana the way that it does. I don't know if he can, just sack that to get a Hill Giant onto the table is probably out of the question.
Clutch Current's gonna bounce, allow Ross to get in the red zone here for a pretty healthy amount. 6 damage. Pass the turn back over to Brown. Now this might be one of those times where we see a sheer drop.
Well, I think Brown still has an incentive here with Ross stalled on lands to just get his threat back out on the table. Brown is also approaching the amount of mana where he could awaken the sheer drop, and since he's light on threats anyway, I prefer trying to take that sort of tact.
Brown did tap 6 mana pretty quickly, but he's got to unwind a little bit. Maybe think things through. Here's 5 mana. Looks like he's going to go with the Chandler yet again. Just wants to get the threat back on the table, as you mentioned. But what Tom Ross has attacked at that turn, even though Pilgrim's Eye is only coming in for 1 point of damage, it's going to slow down the Pilgrim's Eye.
Yes.
Kozilek Chandler, red zone. Oh, maybe not. Maybe mana zone. It is mana zone. Tom Ross going to take a look.
I believe that's a Conduit of Ruin.
It is. It's going to trigger.
And he has a Breaker of Armies to go get. And there it is.
Yeah, he's going with a late game plan. So when you cast a Conduit, you can search your library for a colorless creature card with converted mana cost 7 or greater. Put on top. But that's when you cast it. It doesn't have to resolve. That's that Eldrazi trigger that we've seen with Emrakul and Ulamog over the years. So Tom wanted to counter it, and Max has a Dispel to counter back.
And that Dispel is in the main deck.
Okay. Ross will draw a card. It does not look like he's found a land, so he just has to pass the turn back yet again. Breaker of Armies, the draw here for Max Brown.
Combo with Conduit of Ruin and Kozilek's.
There, yeah, there you are. Whew. I've told you once, Raise is coming.
Thank you.
We're going to get you one. There are combos upon combos here. Here's the Breaker.
Just test the waters.
Well, Tom has another counter spell there in Spell Shrivel, and that's pretty important because Breaker would probably end the game if it resolved.
Yeah, I mean, he's in one respect keeping his head above water. Unfortunately, he is still facing down, 10 power on the table, stuck on 3 lands.
Yep. It's not an easy spot to be in. Here are the attackers. Maybe Tom is forced to make a double block here.
Yeah, unfortunately for him, he has no double blocks that only have one of his creatures die.
Yep.
Any double block involves both of his creatures.
So I suppose the boss has to decide which creature he wants to have leave the, or which creature he'd like for on Max's Brown side to leave the battlefield. Count of Ruin is a 5/5. Looks like he's just going to take all that damage. Going to fall down to 9. Use his life total as a resource and hope to draw some lands to get out of this.
If I'm Ross right now, I'm really annoyed we played it out.
Yeah.
Would just really have preferred to go on to game 3.
Your big plan.
Yeah, it just didn't work.
All right, here's 5 mana. Tom going to use that Eldrazi sign. There's some processing that's going to take place here, it appears. Actually, he's going to return something. Pardon me. That was a copy of Wilmog's Reclaimer. Doing some reclaiming.
Allows him to rebuy a spell. I would imagine he got back Clutch of Currents, trying to slow the game down a little bit further.
2/5's not terrible in this spot.
Nope.
Big defense.
Blocks a 4/4.
Yep. Max looks like he's going towards Sheer Drop. He's got one in his hand. No surprise there with so many in his deck. 6 mana.
And Sheer Drop makes a lot of sense this turn because it's not like Brown can do anything with the Chandelier in terms of attacking. The 2/5 covers the 4/4. Conduit of Ruin is still in the clear to attack. And then next turn you get to go wide with an Awakened land plus your 4/4.
Here come the attackers. Pilgrim's Eye, the Conduit coming in. Is it chump block time here for Tom Ross? He's considering it.
Well, it's a question of, do you think you're ever going to get anything better out of it than saving 5 damage? I don't see this Stonewaker doing much more than this.
Well, right now, Tom says, I'll take the damage. The follow-up here for Max is another copy of Mist Intruder. He'll pass the turn back over to Ross. Ross is at 3, and he's facing down a pretty tough board to beat right now. Mist Intruder, Pilgrim's Eye, Kozilek's Channeler, the Conduit of Ruin, and then that 3/3 island that has been awoken.
So it's not necessarily lethal on board, but it does put Ross in a position where if he doesn't have a flyer to play, he has to block everything for the remainder of the game. The 2 flyers in play are going to send him to 1, and it's going to be hard for him to manage the board, obviously, with only 4 lands.
What can the boss do? Can he get out of this situation, or will former Invitational champion Max Brown get the better of the 2-time Invitational champion here, Tom Ross? There's Clutch of Currents. So that took care of the Conduit. And now the Pilgrim's Eye is down too.
Yeah. Ross there with a Boiling Earth, so now he goes to 2 from the flyer in the air and has to chump block one of Brown's threats.
Yep.
And Brown gets to recast the conduit, which could yield some more action.
It's not looking good for Tom Ross. It's looking very good for Max Brown. Here come the beatdowns. You mentioned the chump block that needs to be done. The Stonewaker is going to jump in front of Kozilek's Chandler. And Ulamog's Reclaimer is in front of the Awakened land. 1 damage will come across. There's an ingest. There goes Oblivion Sower. Land number 6 there for Brown. There's Conduit of Ruin yet again.
I don't believe there's anything left in Brown's set to go get at this point. But nothing wrong with the 6-mana 5/5.
Nope. Tom with a mountain for the draw. He's had land troubles the entire time, and he's just going to extend the hand. He cannot get himself out of this one. Max Brown going to win this match here over Tom Ross, 2-0. The blue-white deck is going to take care of blue-red, and for Max Brown, it's a great start. He is 3-0 here this weekend in Atlanta.